Hi everyone, this is Blake Anderson. Welcome to my coaching channel, and I'm a registered social worker with over 12 years of collective experience, and I have 5 years working as a therapist. In this video, I'm going to cover working with couples, but particularly focus on the man in the relationship and how he's maybe controlled by a narcissistic mother and how this affects the partner, the woman partner. I guess this could be in a gay relationship as well, but in this video I'm going to focus more on the dynamic between a heterosexual relationship in terms of mother influencing her son and indirectly or directly impacting the wife or the woman in the relationship. Often what will occur is the man will take his mom's side and will not be fully differentiated himself from his mother or family. He may be conscious of this and might even share that he doesn't put up with her and is supportive of his partner. He often might say that he's not influenced by his mother or controlled by her, but even if this is the case from his perspective, within the notion of the adult self and the child self, there's a huge difference in terms of understanding what's going on for the husband. So in this video, I'm going to cover this notion of the adult self and the child self, but I'll get more to that in a bit. So this video is focusing more on the woman and how she might be experiencing and be on the receiving end of this dynamic, but it could also apply to a guy that's in this relationship and recognizes that his mother is having a negative influence on his relationship. I guess particularly, usually I think why you might come to this video is that it's become a dynamic or an issue in the relationship in terms of the mother having excess influence on her son, and where the wife or the partner feels like she's not being supported by her husband or partner. So the husband might know that this is something that he's aware of in terms of the relationship. He also may understand that it's a pattern in his past relationships in terms of how he got feedback, I guess, from his past partners. And so he might even be aware that his mother can be toxic or has a negative impact on his relationships. He might not use the word toxic because obviously it's a very negative connotation to that word, but might understand that his mom can be a certain way or difficult. So the way that this becomes a problem is that for the narcissistic mother, her focus is on herself as the primary focus. And as such, she sees her son as an extension of herself. And then you as his partner, are fine as long as you go along with what she wants and perceives. But if you assert your individuality, this can become a problem in the family. And so I think of about an example where I'm working with a couple, and in the past where the woman was pregnant and felt negatively influenced by the mother-in-law when she became pregnant. So she would she said some examples such as, the mom would come over unannounced to the house, would want to hold the baby, not really respecting the mother's, motherly role, but being overly passive-aggressive and controlling. But often this is very covert and subtle. It's not easily picked up on usually. But in the situation, the mother felt not supported by her husband and felt vulnerable, particularly because she was pregnant with a young child. And so this couple would argue quite a bit. And I think to a degree that the husband would recognize that his mother can be a certain way, but would also minimize and I guess make excuses for his mother and for his family. And I'll go into maybe why that occurs with men who grow up with a narcissistic mother. I want to make a distinction between the adult self and a child self that exists within oneself. I guess in the sense that, one can mature and grow up and become an adult and, have an intellectual understanding of matters within his family or within his relationship, and might be able to intellectually understand the way in which his mom can be difficult as an adult self. And basically, the child self is this part of ourselves that, is still a child but becomes reactive, particularly from our family of origin. And so even though we might intellectually, as an adult self, understand certain dynamics, as a child self, we still might be triggered and I guess, get dysregulated from our family of origin. But often the adult self will be in defense because they might not always recognize the child self as being triggered and being influenced still. And so this is usually a subconscious process, right? So it's usually an adult self being disconnected from their child self, and the family of origin, and particularly the mother, continually have influence on this child self of the husband in the relationship. So that's a first, I guess, insight to recognize, is that when speaking to your husband, or when trying to help or to try to understand this dynamic, it's a good consideration to consider that the child self could still be becoming dysregulated and becoming influenced by the mom, and this could be a subconscious and not necessarily conscious. And this is what often leads to that cognitive dissonance that can occur in this dynamic, is the husband can minimize and be very defensive of his family and of his mother, even though he might intellectually understand the way that she operates. And the wife and the woman partner, often will not feel supported because the husband is either trying to make his mom happy, or at least trying to please her to a degree in which she's not becoming a problem, or there is any kind of unnecessary rift within the family. This kind of second concept to understand is that he is probably focusing on the sense of the family unit, and focusing on what could be termed as the super self of the family. So we all have an ego, right? But we can also consider that the family has a collective self, a super self. And the super self is basically this notion that, particularly within a dysfunctional family system, there is this larger ego, or this larger self, and it plays itself out in the sense that the person in that dynamic might know that he's being mistreated by his mom, but because he doesn't want to alienate himself from his family or create too much rift in the family, then he will placate, or he will appease this super self of the family in order to not become ostracized, or to become scapegoated, or to create any kind of unnecessary negative impact. But the problem with this is that it usually doesn't work, because obviously when you're dealing with a more narcissistic person, they want things their way, usually, and they're not really respecting the individuality of their children. And so in this case, of their son. And you, as an independent person, if you're the wife or the woman in the relationship, you will have your individuality, and you might have grown up in a healthy home where this sort of dysfunctional family system wasn't as acute or as strong. And I think we all come from various families, and so it could be the case that you also come from a somewhat dysfunctional family, but at least you're not as emotionally connected to the family, obviously, right? So you can maybe see, and maybe you've been on the receiving end of some negative scapegoating from the family or from the mom. You could be, it could be passive aggressiveness. It could be, a certain smearing that occurs from them speaking negatively about you to others, and finding different ways to try to influence their son indirectly, and just, usually gaslighting, right? Like, just, it's usually very covert, and you can't necessarily always point at it directly or come up with necessarily concrete evidence of bad behavior, but you can definitely understand that it's not right, and you usually pick up over time this pattern. The challenge, though, is that usually, at least with the couples that I've worked with, the husband or the partner, the male partner, wants, I think, to ensure that, like, they might have a romantic notion of their family and wanting to keep their family together. They might describe themselves as a family person or traditional, and even though intellectually, again, they might understand that the way that their mother might be, or the way that their family can be, they might quickly jump to wanting to keep their family together and not create any rift in the family dynamic. And so they will have a cognitive dissonance in the sense that they likely would want, usually the cases, at least with the couples that I've dealt with, is that the husband or the male partner, even though he might not directly say it out loud, he at times will, I think, want the woman partner to go along with his family or some of the expectations of his family in order to just, I guess, get by and to allow some level of cohesion within the family. But the problem is that coming from a dysfunctional family, it's not something that really, you can't fix what is broken, right? In the sense that you can't fix what is underlying in terms of a dysfunctional family system, right? But usually, I guess the next step is to understand is that this notion of the theory of change, right? When the theory of change is basically there's different stages of one's ability to change, right? And you can think about it as an alcoholic, right? So the first stage is denial, and they can be then in a pre-contemplative stage and be contemplating change and maybe recognizing intellectually that they need to change or they need to stop drinking. They can then maybe start taking action, like attending an AA group or stopping drinking alcohol. So applying this to a husband who's negatively influenced by his mom, you can understand that he might be in denial / maybe pre-contemplative, that he might, again, intellectually understand it, but not really taking action to protect his partner or his wife. My general philosophy, and from a lot of the literature, is obviously when you become married or you get in a committed relationship, that becomes the central unit and the kind of the central focus. Often in these situations is the son hasn't become fully differentiated from his family or from his mom. You kind of experience that negative consequences of that, and it leads you, I think, to not trust or to have not feeling supported from your husband or your partner. Often husbands and male partners can be defensive because they don't necessarily consciously, I think, see that they're not being supportive. They might become defensive and just say like, well, I did this when my mom said this, or I become angry and I don't allow her to push me around. And even if this is the case, they're still, I think, engaging in the process in a way that isn't fully differentiated or in a way that fully grapples with or fully accepting, I guess, the way in which the family unit is dysfunctional. Your husband or partner, it is, we all become individuated as we get older and we become more mature. It is his responsibility to become his own person and also to focus on his romantic relationship as his primary focus. But this is easier said than done. And again, a lot of this isn't conscious on his part. So when I'm working with clients and I know that they aren't necessarily open to change in the sense of taking action, they might have some inclination that there needs to be some change or there's some problem, but they might still be in denial or still revert back to maybe a romantic notion of their family being maybe not perfect, but still wanting to keep that family together in terms of, that child self still needing that family, right? And I think having empathy and compassion for the understanding of the child self, and if you think about a child, how vulnerable they are and how if the family rejects them, that can mean, I guess if you think about like a tribe, right? If you become ostracized from the tribe, your life and your very life could be at threat, right? So that is what could be operating in terms of the system anxiety when the son or the male in the relationship is asserting certain boundaries with his family. So just understanding that, and in terms of the theory of change, if you know that they're in pre-contemplative or in denial to some degree, I think what you can do is you can start to plant seeds, just have realistic expectations, which is difficult, right? Because when you're on the receiving end of this kind of covert narcissism, this kind of control and power coming from the mother, and have actual real consequences, right, in terms of how they are treating you, it can become maybe frustrating, and you become very quickly to become upset with your partner and not really understanding why they don't get it and becoming angry. I think, though, at least understanding that, understanding of planting seeds with them, because they might be at that kind of pre-contemplative stage. You want to get them to take action, about setting boundaries with their family, with their mother, but just maybe understanding of where they are in terms of their understanding and their realization. Let's just say that, if I was working with a couple, I would focus on him understanding that it's his role to speak to his family, because it's not obviously your in-laws, or sorry, it's not your family, right? So I think that anytime in a relationship, it's if it's your family, you should be dealing with your side of the family. I think what happens in this situation usually is, you become married or become committed to somebody, and they say like when you marry somebody, you marry their family, right? And I think sometimes, one can be very close at first with the family of the husband in the relationship. But then over time, this can occur where there's controlling or there's this dysfunction that's occurring in the family dynamic, and your husband or your partner isn't taking your side, or can be in subtle ways or not so subtle ways wanting you to go along with, to some degree, this abuse or this dysfunction. And I think if you're healthy and you recognize that this isn't working, you're not willing to put up with its distortions and mistreatment. And you also maybe see the way that your husband or partner becomes dysregulated as well. As we mature and we become adults, we become individuals and we individuate. And a healthy adult individuates and differentiates himself from his family, by also staying connected. And there's a lot of understanding, I think, of this it's becoming more well known, but I think that there is still obviously this notion of family being very important and emphasizing the need to keep family cohesion. But obviously, if it's dysfunction that's occurring in the family, or there's narcissistic qualities coming from the parents, in this case, maybe the mother-in-law, then you can't fix that. And I think radical acceptance, understanding what is occurring is very much needed. Again, I would focus on planting seeds with your partner, your husband. If you are the son of the mother, then it's about understanding and moving towards radical acceptance of what is actually occurring. What needs to happen is that first, the couple needs to obviously be on the same page and be on the same team. Come to some understanding of the way that his family is. And this can be challenging, right? Because usually in a couple, in a relationship, there's obviously two perspectives, and it's typical that I would say in this situation that the husband or the male partner will de facto take the side of his family, even though again he might intellectually understand the way in which there can be certain dysfunction. So it's about him, I guess, coming to more grapple with how you have experienced certain negative impacts. This would take him setting boundaries with his family and with his mom, and him being an individual and asserting himself, in a calm way with his mom. And in terms of boundaries, this might be being more selective with interactions with the family, and also, being more selective, having more of a strategy in terms of how you want to interact with the family and with the mother. Again, anytime you're on the receiving end of dysfunction or of narcissistic abuse or covert manipulation, it's can be very challenging, because usually these types of people, they don't necessarily see differentiation between you and them. But that being said, it's still the onus is on the partner or on the couple to be strategic in terms of how they want to interact with his side of the family. And so that's number one. Number two is, again, understanding the adult self and the child self. The husband or the male, and also could be yourself as a woman, working on the sense of inner bonding, understanding that his child self might be reactive towards the mom and still might be influenced in that regard. There's this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and so I'd recommend that for men. But usually it's the situations where the man will be trying to please his family and his wife as well, and then not understanding why it seems that his wife or his woman partner doesn't trust him or is seemingly very negative towards his family. And so, but he has to understand, I think, that he can't please everyone, and he must really understand himself first and have a kind of a confidence and a kind of individuation of self, so that he can individuate and become a healthier partner. Understanding the inner child and understanding the adult self, and understanding how one can become dysregulated by this inner child when around a more narcissistic mother. If the husband or the male partner can have insight into this, then that can be very positive and be healthy in terms of the development of the relationship. I guess I would say that it's typical. What I've seen is that obviously if there's a breach of trust in the relationship, that can lead the woman to often not necessarily be wanting intimacy. There can be trust issues in the relationship dynamic. There can obviously be gridlock or arguments around this that continue on and don't get resolved. And so hopefully this video has helped you gain some insight in terms of how to deal with this dynamic. And if you are the woman or the wife in this dynamic, how you can work with your husband or your male partner to shed some light and some insight into this dynamic. Again, focusing on understanding his child self and his adult self. He might not be fully conscious of how his child self is being negatively influenced by his mom. Understanding though that there's going to likely be some real consequences, right, by setting boundaries, him setting boundaries. But at the end of the day, we're here as individuals on this planet, and obviously we want our family, and we want to be close to our family. But I think if you have to also accept what is in terms of what is occurring in the family, and this can be hard because it's very ingrained in us, I think, to value our family and to value cohesion and not to create any conflict. But the reality is that if one is toxic or one is negative and is being controlling and not allowing the couple to fully flourish, then it's definitely the onus is on the man especially to assert himself and to differentiate himself from his mom and from his family. And this is a journey and may take some time, but thinking about planting seeds versus necessarily getting angry with him because at some level he's not maybe conscious of it fully, right? In this video, I shared different strategies and different approaches in terms of how a son dealing with a mom who is controlling or has certain narcissistic qualities, how you as a woman or as a woman partner can help him in this dynamic. Hopefully it's helped you get some insights, some tools so that you can become a healthier in terms of your couple and your relationship, and how you can raise your kids, maybe if you guys have kids, in a healthier and I guess would say more functioning way in terms of healthier dynamic. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks and have a great day.